Welcome to A Well-Designed Business with your host, Luann Nigara. Luann has a lifetime of experience building a multi-million-dollar business with her husband and cousin, and she knows the challenges you face in your interior design business. Luann brings you real-life answers to your most pressing problems, as well as practical strategies to explode your interior design business. So, let's get to the business of interior design.
Hi, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. Today, Cynthia Spence joins me. She is the principal of Cynthia Spence Design, located in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they are a full-service interior design firm catering to both residential and commercial clients. In our conversation, you will hear Cynthia describe how she feels today's world has become increasingly noisy and how important she thinks it is to create environments that provide solace and restoration for her clients. We also spend a great deal of time in the show talking about how her previous career in marketing and management positions in prominent entertainment and high-tech companies informs her interior design career. While this is not the typical route to interior design, the experience that she has in relationship marketing, creative services, and project management have helped shape her business and have contributed significantly to its success. And we're going to benefit from that today, too, because she really goes into a lot of detail about the types of skills and services you need to have in order to have a successful firm. Now, I have a question for you before we start the show. Have you tried Instacravit yet? You know, if you have a project that you're working on, or maybe it's already a completed project, but if you have used any Cravit product, it could be fabric, lighting, trim, rugs, furniture, anything at all, take a picture of it, post it to social media, and use the hashtag Instacravit. Be sure to tag Cravit. Tag me too, because that would be fun. And about once a week, Cravit goes through all these posts that have the hashtag Instacravit, and they repost some of them. So be on the lookout for others that are using the hashtag Instacravit, but make sure that you get in on it and post your next Cravit project. Alrighty, now let's meet Cynthia Spence. Hi, Cynthia. Thank you so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, Luann. Nice to meet you.
Yes, you too. So I'm looking forward to this interview because there are some times when I read about somebody's background that it particularly intrigues me. I have to say almost all the time because I'm a very curious person. But I liked when I read about your background, and it said that your background is in marketing and management positions in entertainment and tech industries. And I thought that was a really perfect trifecta, really. Entertainment, tech, and interior design. I mean, marketing and management in both of those two industries probably very nicely support a framework for an interior design business. Have you found that to be the case, Cynthia?
I actually have. I think, first of all, marketing is a very creative field. It is all about building a brand with visuals and concise, beautiful prose. And so that certainly lends itself to the creative side of one's head. The management side definitely plays a big hand in what it is that we do. And I have found that it was a very seamless transition because one of the things that I was always applauded for were my relationship marketing skills. In fact, at one corporation, they used to give me the contracts to negotiate that nobody else could. And the way that I did that really was by listening to what other people wanted. And the skill of listening is paramount in what it is that we do because, in all honesty, the creative portion of this job is about 10 to 15% of the whole sum.
Right.
And that's the real cream that's the cream layer on top of the coffee. And we don't get to do a lot of that. A lot of it is budgets and schedules and a lot of paperwork related to procurement and coordination and the same kind of things that you grapple with in a corporate environment. but I like to do it all fresh and new with each client because I think that what we do is just like branding, it's very soulful. And what we get to do is figure out how and why our clients want to live a certain way and then help craft that for them. So I have found that everything that I have done has led me to here and positioned me well, I think, for the business side of this particular field.
Well, and it is so critical. You're saying 10 to 15%. I've had people, by the largest percentage I've ever had anybody express is 20% is creative. So, we could split a few hairs, but the reality is, and I have to say, I think that's with every business. I don't care if you're running an ice cream stand. 20% of the time you're scooping ice cream. The rest of the time you're figuring out how to buy it, where to buy it, how to keep it cold, how to move it here, right? So
Correct.
it's the absolute truth of it. One of the things that I like that you said is that two things in there that I like is that I had that thought, you expressed that marketing is building a brand around a product or service. And that was what I thought when I read the background on you. And I thought to myself, well, she comes into it already understanding that she's got to come out of the gate branding her interior design business. She's a marketing professional. A lot of us come late to that game and think that, we're just running a business, and we're not realizing how much of the success of that business goes into creating a cohesive brand that can be identified. And I have to say, I think I have to say, anybody that's listened to the podcast full on from the beginning knows full well now that that's the same whether you are a solo working in the third floor of your home or you are a big firm with a staff of employees, that you need a brand. But if you are new to the podcast, this may be new information, because I feel like we have come a long way in really expressing the importance of that. So you open your firm with this understanding. And now I'm finding out that it was also your sweet spot, that you were the one who they called on and relied on to run the team on that. So that's really exciting. The other thing that I liked is that I guess what you meant was, I'll check with you, when you said you like fresh and new ideas, like fresh and new with every single client.
Correct.
I'm understanding you're talking about the contrast of maybe when you're working in marketing, you might be on a single, like you might have multiple accounts, but you're on account for several years and you're always having to come up with something new and different for the same account. Whereas in interior design, you're coming up with something new and different for each client. Is that what the distinction you were trying to make there?
Well, the distinction that I was trying to make actually is the fact that every client is uniquely new and different. Mm-hmm. And so they have strong preferences for color and space and the way that they want to live. So I approach each of them as new and individual, to relate it back to what you were saying, products, if you will.
Okay.
So I think that in the analogy of marketing, because I had the experience of working not only on the client side, where we did brand each new product, but under the same umbrella, and I worked on the agency side where each different product was its own brand. And I think that probably is more akin to the model of this business.
Okay.
I think that each of my clients, I think of each of them as uniquely different because they all are.
Right. And
I'm not one of those designers that wants to give everybody the same sofa.
Right.
That's the creative part that I think is so much fun. I love the sourcing, with fresh eyes, because I have a new client that needs something completely different from the last person that I worked for. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it worth getting up in the morning, because there's a lot of tedium that goes along with business.
There is.
In your ice cream analogy, I would even put it more towards, 5% is creating the new flavor. The rest of it is all the sourcing and the collecting the money and the scooping the ice cream.
Right.
That stuff, the real labor.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
share with everybody how many years you have been in your own firm.
I have had my own firm for 12 years.
Okay, so it's a good long time. And so What have you, I mean, now let's talk a little bit so we understand how the marketing informs, and tell us a little bit of the nuts and bolts on how your management experience informed you when you first opened up. And where I'm going, Cynthia, is somebody listening who's 1 to 3 years in business, and you're going to look at them and say, these are some of the things that you want to get locked down. Don't mistake it when you come out and you start, because you learned it from your management experience and now you have the hindsight of a 12-year career.
Yes. I think the most important thing that we have to do every single day is show up as our best self. You get one chance to make a first impression, and that impression lasts for a very long time, and it's difficult to correct.
Okay,
good
point.
The course of that. So I think that you have to show up as your very best self. And I do think that it's very, very important. It sounds counterintuitive, but in order to engage a client and really connect with them and gain their trust, you have to be a good listener. You have to not so much sell yourself as listen to what it is that they need, and then position yourself as the perfect person to serve it up to them.
Exactly.
So I think that the ability to think on your feet is an important one, but I also think this is really genuinely a people business. I call it herding cats sometimes, especially on the supply side.
Right. Yes. Getting all your vendors to do what you need them to do when they need to do it.
Precisely. And it's really important for us to understand that we don't just work for our clients. We do, and they are king at the end of the day, but we can't deliver a product to them without the help of our suppliers. So we also have to be good to them and take care of them. And sometimes that's defending them to the client. And many, many times it's continuing to look for the right one.
Right. You're singing to the choir here, girlfriend. I'm going to tell you right now, because you may or may not know this, but my day job is Window Works, where we are a custom window treatment and awning retailer. And a lot of my business is directly to interior designers and, when they're window treatment person. So I'm a vendor in that team of many interior designers businesses. And the two things that you just said, number one is, defending them sometimes to your client. And number two is hurting us, getting all the kittens in the darn box.
Yes. But, we can't do that unless we have proven our loyalty and loyalty to and defensiveness of you and the service that you provide.
Yes.
You're not going to bend over backwards for us if we are difficult to work with, unappreciative, and throw you under the bus. I think that the most valuable lessons that we learn are the ones where we make mistakes. And it's very, very important to be aware of when we make a mistake, why and how we made it, so that we avoid ever doing it again.
Right.
And I am fortunate. Many, many of my mistakes, if not all, I have made on myself. So I have prevented myself from being humiliated in front of the client. But, I was the person that remodeled my kitchen and paid the cabinet guy too much money before he was completed and got left in the dust. So I now tell my clients, oh, no. We don't make final payment to anybody until we are satisfied with the product.
Right.
So,
it's a whole dance there. There's a lot in what you're talking about. You're talking about your relationship with your vendors, which is very important. And you're right. You get the loyalty of your vendors when they feel the loyalty coming back to them as well. And I know firsthand, I'll move heaven and earth for any one of you out the gate. But particularly once you are really every single month, year in and year out, coming back. I mean, that's just human nature, right? I mean, and it's also good business. Let's be serious. You can say that a vendor is playing favorites, but you can also say that a vendor understands where their bread is buttered. Let's be serious.
That's right. And I do believe that the best business is done by people with honor and integrity.
Mm-hmm.
I just really believe that, being ethical pays off in the long run. You can call it karma, if you will, but I just think that that's part of, showing up as your best self.
Right.
We're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. We work very, very hard to bring some sort of a concept to fruition, and it takes a village, and all those villagers matter and should be treated as such unless they prove themselves otherwise.
Right.
So, and I will say, given that the business that you're in, window treatments are some of the most difficult things for designers to do until they understand how complex they are. And one of my most valued vendors is my window treatment guy. I am loyal to him beyond belief. I am probably one of his largest clients. He is only to the trade. He is overly busy, but he will do anything for me because we are equally loyal to each other.
Right. And it comes from understanding the dynamics of the relationship, and like you said, of listening first, and of being loyal second, and conducting yourself with integrity, third. I mean, and it's funny because I feel like a lot of times you're right. It does take going through these things in your own business and learning the lessons of this through the hard way. Maybe you overlook a vendor and you underestimate their value, and then all of a sudden you need that vendor, and they're sort of like, yeah, remember me, the one you were stomping on last week in front of the client, like not so ready to come back, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, what's funny is it always reminds me of, what is this saying? There's a saying, or there's just a thing, you pay attention to how people treat the quote unquote service people. So if you're out to, if you meet a new girlfriend for, you meet her at a networking event or something, and you hit it off, and then you go to lunch together, and he or she, your friend, your new friend that you really don't know, is not nice to the wait staff, it sort of leaves a bad taste in your, right? You're sort of like, really? And I feel like, I have many times in my career been on the project with a designer who is treating the vendors, me included, that's how I know it, as the wait staff. And it's just like, really? You want to do these window treatments without my help? Okay. Go ahead. I don't know what, so you're right. It's good advice. Come as your best self, and coming as your best self entails everything, and thinking about the ramifications all the way through. I like it. And so talk to us a little bit about managing your firm. You're 12 years in business. Tell us a little bit how it's set up and what it looks like, so we can have a grasp on what your day-to-day is like.
Well, my day-to-day is always different. I feel like, and I say this all the time, we play whack-a-mole for a living. It's kind of whoever's screaming the loudest, right? But I do try to work with budgets and schedules as best I can, because I happen to be in a part of the country where our company town business is technology, and I come out of that. So I know how those minds work and how they like to project manage. And it is with documentation. It is with a budget, and it is with a schedule. And we all understand that budgets can get exceeded, and that time schedules can take longer. And as long as you have rational and honest explanations for why that is, and you're upfront with your client pretty early on, then they're fairly accepting of it. So there's usually a crisis that kind of redirects the day, but I have a small staff and a lot of outside suppliers that I rely on, like bookkeepers and payroll people. And I have coaches. I have very valued coaches. One is my kind of connector coach, and the other one is an operations coach.
Nice.
In-house, I have a highly valued senior designer who actually comes from the East Coast. And so she calls herself Urban Girl, which is fabulous because she loves to be out running around, and she's very efficient. And as am I. We're both very good at covering a lot of space in a very short distance. And then I have a junior designer that is very adept at all of the CAD and Photoshop work that we need to build the image so that the client can start to visualize what it is that we're providing them. And because we work on a lot of large remodels and new builds, we do everything from reflected ceiling treatments to whole house lighting plans to all of the architectural detailing, and then the furnishings and of course, all the finishes, the tile and slab, the cabinetry design. So he's pretty busy with a lot of drawings.
And so I said it in the introduction, but just as a reminder, you're in San Francisco. And so when you were alluding to the type of demographic and client that you have a lot of tech and computer people,
Yes.
and like the whole Apple and the Silicon Valley and all of that. And so I can understand how that client is different. Angela Rasmussen was on the show from H2H Design Build, and she's also San Jose. So she was expressing the same thing, where she's got a lot of clients in the tech industry, and it's all about nailing down the details. And you're right. I would say she said the same thing. It doesn't mean that the project doesn't change along the way, whether it be budget or timeline, but it means that the changes are documented, and it means that the changes aren't surprises, and it means that you're so much better if you've notified your client of the changes. And so that requires a particular level of discipline and project management in order to do that. It's not loosey-goosey.
It's not. And I also think that it takes a pretty sophisticated level of communication as well.
Right.
There's a certain way that you want to spin things. You
Right.
don't want to, you don't want to let them see you sweat. That's all kind of behind the curtain.
Well, and I often say to my showroom coordinator, there are always two ways to say something. One starts with, I can't do that. I don't know why I don't have anybody available. And the other is, here's the day that we're available. Will that work for you? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the simplest thing. It's like, don't get tied up in knots and what you can't do. Let's talk about what we can do. Maybe what we can do is just great.
Exactly.
So, yes. And
exactly.
So it's true. And so that's, and by the way, the reason I brought all that up is because your demographic has a particular nuance and a particular response to having things very tightly buttoned up. But that's valuable for anybody. I don't care if you're working in, the biggest artsy fartsy creative place on the planet and everybody's low key. People like to know when they're spending dollar bills that you've got the project under control.
That's right. They
Right.
do.
Right.
They do.
Exactly. Okay. So talk to us now. Again, in that area, you are doing a lot of whole house motorization, and the Crestron and the Lutron. We have to do all that stuff too because we're right here in Manhattan, and of course that is very, desirable here. Tell us, for designers that are scared to death of all of this, which they rightly should be, I have to say.
Yes, they should be. I was going to say that if you didn't.
Oh, and it's like, look, I'm busting their chops. If you haven't worked with it, yes, it's scary, it's crazy, it's intense, it's detailed, but you should strive to do it. It's where the world is going. So what is your advice, Cynthia, for designers that maybe they've had one or two people talk about this whole house integration and they're a little nervous? What's your first couple of things that come to mind to get over the hurdle when you're new?
Well, so given my demographic here, I see the world break down into two very distinct categories, probably different from Manhattan, because Manhattan tends to be very sophisticated. And it's not to say that we aren't, but I have done whole house Crestron, Lutron automation which gives you a very elegant interface that's very simple. And I did that for a guy that is a retired CEO and just wants to be able to press a button and everything works. But then I have other clients that are younger, still very much engaged in the tech world, are highly aware of how quickly it's changing, and would rather rely on Wi-Fi and apps. So what that means is you can do whole house automation. It's just that it's all run off your phone and it's all these different apps. So there's nothing real elegant about the upfront interface to the average bear that just wants one button.
Right.
So, but the advice that I would give to somebody starting out is this is where it's really critical to find a very good, knowledgeable, reliable vendor whom is willing to educate you to a certain extent.
Right.
And the difficulty there is that I'm seeing those people become more and more brand specialized. So there's a guy that will represent Crestron, and then there's a guy that will represent the other brands.
Right.
So it's a little bit tough. I think you need to do your own research. I think you have to play with some of this stuff. I think you have to have a curious mind and ask questions. You would be a perfect person for somebody new to ask about home automation because you have one piece of it, right?
Right.
And so they need to understand all of the pieces that can possibly be automated and then reach out to some of those suppliers that represent them and ask them what they're seeing. You kind of have to constantly braille the market in order to stay ahead of the curve.
Yes, it's true. I mean, and the truth is that you're right. I'm one component of it, and my head swims with it. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, and we do it all the time. But I'm always like crossing my T's and dotting my I's and having 9,000 conversations with my suppliers for the wholesale net goods on it, and saying, okay, because a lot of times what happens to me is so there are times like you're probably very often in the position where you're working from the ground up, the build up, right?
Yes.
So it's all being integrated. But I'm now very often being called in down the line, and the wiring is there and different things are there, and maybe
but it's not in the right place.
Right. Or like I've got drapery rods that they want motorized, and those are going to have to be the Glidea from Silent Gliss or from Sunfeed or whatever, and that's not Lutron. And the Lutron guy isn't going to put the drapery rods in. And so then I have that whole extra layer of getting my Sunfeed components talking to Crestron or talking to Lutron, which is a whole nother crazy pants thing. And so, but I have compassion for designers who have to understand how the lighting is automated, how the heating is automated into it, how the window treatments are automated into it. And so I agree with you. To me, the thing is exactly as you said, reach out to trusted vendors. Certainly in the moment, in the project, you're asking as many questions as you can so that this first time you have 15 questions, the next time you have 12, the next time you have 10, yada, yada. But then also, right, look around for these vendors who might be offering little seminars and programs on it. And you're not going to come away from anybody's presentation on Lutron and really understand how to do it. But you're going to come away with something that you'll go, oh, okay. All right.
Well, yes, and that something might be relevant to what you're doing right now, because I have had scenarios where at the outset of the build, the clients weren't going to automate anything.
Right.
And then halfway through the build, they decide, okay, we do want it automated.
Right.
And then that can change sometimes what you automate and how you do it, right? And then, and then there's also at the end of the build when it's, oh my gosh, why didn't we? So, so there's a lot of different, I like to educate them as much as I possibly can up front. And I always do it with a trusted supplier that's a whole lot smarter than I am. Because our knowledge base really needs to be a mile wide, and in this area, an inch or two thick.
Right. Right.
You need to go to the guys that are an inch wide and a mile deep, so that we can, so that they can really be the person that comes in. But then you also have to control them, because typically they're engineers and they want to go really deep.
That's the truth. That's so funny that you say that, because I actually have said to my guy, okay, you are now talking about things that I don't need to know. Don't get me crazy. Don't confuse me. Stick with, because my guy is so good and so helpful that I will ask him. I remember it was so funny. I had a specific situation in Manhattan just this past summer where the client had a Crestron system, wanted battery operated shades because there was no way to add wiring at this point because she inherited the the apartment with it, but she wanted the battery operated shades to be talking to the house home system. And I'm just going, whoa. So my guy, oh yeah, we could do that. And he starts to tell me all how it's going to be done. I'm like, you see, the yes is all I needed.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Okay,
the yes and the how much.
That's it. Like, don't confuse me.
Right. That's right.
And then there's a time when I do need to know more. Like I have to say, I wouldn't suggest anybody not get as much understanding as they can. But if you're like me, I need it when I need it, and I need what I need when I need it. And then when I'm ready for the next layer, I'll take that too, because
yes, well said.
Yes. Yep. So, but it's interesting. And I think that I really indulged this conversation because I knew from your background that you do a lot of motorization. We've only talked about it one or two other times on the show. And it is what's happening in design now. It is becoming more and more commonplace. And I thought you were a good opportunity to have a little discussion about it for designers who haven't quite put their toe in it yet. And the easy way to start with your toe in it is with battery motorization. It's to start, ask your window treatment people and different stuff to just get you going with the battery motorizers, because it's not nearly as big of a learning curve, not nearly as expensive, and the mistake is so much easier to clean up if there is one.
That's right. It's a much lower bar to entry.
Exactly.
As are, home heating systems like Nest.
Right.
And there's, doorbell systems that let you see people who are at your front door, and they're all app related, and those are much easier to understand.
Mm-hmm. And your point, you said a little bit in there too at one point, your point was to use it, to work with it. And of course, if you have any ability in your own home to install some of these products, I found that was when the turn changed for me. When we moved into a new townhouse 4 years ago, my husband insisted that every window treatment be motorized, and I thought he was out of his mind because half the rooms are empty. It's just the two of us, but we did it, and now I'm like, oh, I get this. We have all different systems, and I know how to use them all. And it does make it so much easier and comfortable to discuss it and talk about it and visualize it. And if you don't have the opportunity to do that, then you've got to go to your different showrooms and sit and play and really digest it. So I like it. But it's a good, also too, what I like about it is it's a good marketing device. If you can say, Fred Burns is always on the show and say, what's your only? If you can say you are the only interior designer in the area who specializes in home motorization, home automation, that's because people are going to Google that when they go to do a build, home automation. And so it's a nice little marketing thing for you if you can get a handle on it. And that's really, Cynthia, right? I think it's very clear that we agree on it. You need a handle on it, and then you need a trusted vendor behind you. And that's really all you need to start doing it.
Precisely.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. Okay. Awesome. I love it. So I've understood through our conversation that you have a particular skill in listening and a particular skill in communicating. Would you call those your superpowers, or is there something else that you would say is your superpower as a business owner?
I think, I saw that question on your questionnaire, and the way that I would have answered it right away is my relationship management skills. But that really breaks down to listening and communicating.
Yes, yeah.
And
well, those are great superpowers, by the way. I love them.
They are. And I am an empathic, and I learned that later in life, and I've learned to embrace it. So I trust my gut. And there are certain people, I do believe that not every client is our client. Right. Mm-hmm. And there's a chemistry fit. You're going to be in a relationship with this person for 1 to 2 years. Mm. And if you don't immediately kind of grok them, and they don't you, then it's not going to be a great relationship. And it's as important to identify those as it is to embrace the really great ones.
Mm. Awesome. I love it. That's very insightful. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So now tell me a little bit about when you first started. So you come to this as a second career. When you
third, actually.
Third. Okay. So when you come to this as a third career, What did you, first of all, tell us, I don't think I've asked 3 people in 2 years, why did they come to it? But now that it's your third career, I'm a little curious. What made the transition? What made you transition to it?
So I went through a little bit of a personal crisis.
Okay.
And I had been working since I was 14 years old. I've always supported myself and I've always done a good job of it. But I went through, I had a pretty, working in tech is very intense. It's very exciting. It's also very stressful. And I had done that for about 9 or 10 years, and I found myself in need of a pause. And so I kind of checked out, and I sort of gave myself the space to figure out what I might want to do if it wasn't this. And I had never, ever even considered that moment would come for me. And it came sort of because of this personal crisis moment. But at the same time, coincidentally, I was remodeling my house. And I've always either remodeled or built them. But it's always been kind of a sideline thing because I had this full-blown career. And when I was just doing it without having to have the full-blown career, I realized how much I was enjoying it. And so with the sort of knowledge that I was really enjoying it, organically people started asking me to help them. And they always had, but I didn't have time for it. So I just kind of, said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you, but, I'm happy to look at paint colors or whatever." But when you have a full-time job, you just can't do that. And so I thought, well, what would it look like if I were to try to make a living out of this? And I knew nothing about it. Nothing.
That's amazing.
But I've got a really good head for business.
Sure.
And I've got these people marketing skills. So I started looking at my remodel differently, almost as kind of a lab experiment. Okay, so I became hyper aware to all the lessons that I was learning. I got a little bit more into sourcing. And then so the next 3 to 4 years, I actually had a brother in the mortgage industry, and he entertained a lot. He asked me to help him with his house. He had a beach house. I learned a lot about how the ocean reflects on paint. You have to custom mix everything.
Okay.
But so because I did his house and he entertained a lot, I actually kind of went to school on his network of friends. And then after I, sort of learned the infrastructure, got my sources down, understood about how to bill, and this is a very strong referral-based business. And so organically, my clients started to toggle to more of the tech and management and upper management level people. And that is who I predominantly enjoy working with today. But it took me about the first 3 to 5 years to really gain, definitely the first 3. And I think by the time 5 rolled around, I was very convicted, very into it, pretty confident in my knowledge base. And so the things that I started offering became different, because that was when I was starting to get bigger remodels and new builds. So just going in to do a paint consult didn't make a whole lot of sense. But I started doing that, and I also started doing whatever, because I believe in customer service. And I think it's a dying art, and I think that the better you are at it, the more in demand your services will be. And so I just was willing to do pretty much whatever anybody needed. And to this day, we still really enjoy doing that. We call it lifestyle, but we just enjoyed a project with, it was a second home that I had done for this gentleman. And this is his forever house. And he was very excited about having the opportunity and the means to do this. And so about halfway through this very intense remodel, he made the proclamation that he wanted to move in with only his clothes and his toothbrush. So that meant that we outfitted the kitchen, we appointed the entire house, we designed the formal wear, we picked the everyday wear, and we just loved it. We loved it. And so whenever we get the opportunity to do that, we really enjoy that.
It's like playing house with somebody else's money.
With somebody else's money. Yeah. And
exactly.
And often, right?
Yes.
So it's, how you want to change your dishware every now and then. My biggest problem is that I constantly want what I'm buying for other people.
Right. That is the Achilles heel of the industry, right?
So I'm always doing my house. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so you know what I hear in there. Okay, I'm going to spit back to you what I hear in there. What I hear in there is that it is the proof in the theory of the podcast that the most successful interior designers are not necessarily the ones that it's because their talent has created their business. So that doesn't mean I heard in there that you're not talented. What I heard in there is that you are and first were a very smart, intelligent, knowledgeable business person, and you figured out a way to make something that you don't even have an education in not only a little business, but a very successful business that is now at a very high level of luxury. So, and the thing is, so what reason I say all that is because there are designers out there listening that are super, super talented that would look at your portfolio and say, hey, that's really gorgeous, and mine is as gorgeous, but are maybe not successful and maybe don't have a full pipeline. But that's because they need to look at their business skills, not because, well, why is she successful? Her design isn't any prettier than mine, right? Because if you can come from a different field and start a business and 12 years later, for the people listening who are not at a computer, I've seen your website. This is not normal interior design. This is high level luxury interior design. And so it's very impressive. And I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I also heard in there, what I like is that on the contrast, sometimes we see portfolios such as yourselves, and we hear people, designers like yourself, that you can really tell you have it locked down and that you're a smart lady and a smart business person. And we think that you just popped out that way and started with design builds. And to hear you share that, in the beginning, it was all about customer service. And if you wanted a paint color picked, I picked a paint color. And if you wanted this picked, I picked this. Because we forget sometimes the journey all the way to an interior designer who sits in your seat now and can literally do from scratch all the way to, hand towels and, dishes in the cabinet. That's a goal to be chased. And it's nice to understand that it didn't just start out that way, that you worked your way up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've always worked my way up. And I think one of the greatest gifts that I've been given is the recognition that I'm resilient. And I think that it takes a certain level of resiliency to start your own business. I mean, it takes I was pretty fearless in doing it. It wasn't, I didn't have seed money. I don't come from wealth. This is not an inexpensive business to do well. To really differentiate yourself, you have to invest. I did it in the beginning with grit. There was even, I was in business in 2007 and 2008 when the market collapsed, and everywhere felt it. And I managed to pull through and actually grow my business because at that point in time, I decided, hey, I had a lot of real estate brokers that I had done design work for their clients, and they called and asked me to stage homes, and I said, sure. Right. So I think that we can't ever get full of ourselves. I mean, what we do is not curing cancer. We are very blessed to be able to do something that is so much on the pleasurable side of life, and to work with people that can give themselves this and feel worthy of it. So there's a real it's a real gift to be able to be in this business. A lot of people have very difficult menial jobs, and I'm not trying to take anything away from how complex our business is and how stressful it is, because it's all about human relationships. But at the same time, it is it errs on the prettier side of life, if you will.
Right. No, I understand the point you're making very clearly, and it's true. Just because it's not easy and it's not a bed of roses every day of the week doesn't mean that it isn't one of the nicer things in life to do, is to be involved in what's generally a happy process, or a happy outcome at least.
Yes.
Sometimes the process isn't so.
Yeah. Yes, I have a regular colorist, if you're asking.
Exactly. Oh, it's crazy.
I am a friend of Botox, so. Yeah.
Oh, it's nuts. It's a crazy business, that's for sure. I think, though, that your point, you've made it a couple of times, is so well made, is that it is so much about listening and thinking and communicating with intention. That's what I like to say. It's, you have to really, and I say to the kids that work for me all the time, if don't just, it's not just the words somebody says. Listen to the whole thing. Really try and get to what it is. Because sometimes, clients will call up and they're upset and they're crazy and this and that and the other thing. But really, sometimes it's just the anxiety of the situation. And being a good listener and somebody that can pull apart all of that and then carefully think about how to speak back to your client can go a million miles for diffusing a situation and not letting something escalate. Right?
Yeah, that's where it really helps to crawl out of your boots and put your feet in somebody else's. Mm-hmm. Because we just went through a situation with a client who was very mean to us, and we just kind of took it because we needed to, and I understood completely, as did Denise, my senior designer, that it wasn't about us. She was under a lot of pressure to move her family before the kids started school. The house wasn't ready. Her husband was gone, and it wasn't about us.
No.
It didn't make it any easier to take
be
it.
You. Right.
That's
exactly.
Right. It wasn't fun. There were many, many times that we looked at each other and said, we are not doing another thing for them. But it wasn't about us. No. And it's really important to understand that people have a lot of pressures on them that we don't necessarily know about. Mm-hmm. And, life is a little bit of a pressure cooker for everybody.
Right.
And so we can't think of ourselves as, the source of all, whether it's good or bad. We just have to kind of take a long look at the picture and understand that it may not really be about us. That's just the human psyche and how we behave.
Exactly right. I like it. And what do you have coming up? What are some of the goals for your firm in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? Anything that you'd share with us?
Sure. I am working on branding. Oh. I am, when I first started in this business, coming from a marketing background, I was very adamant that a designer shouldn't advertise. But this year I have been doing some advertising in 2 shelter publications that I like very much, and I'm doing it specifically for branding, not so much. I mean, I believe that I know enough about how this all works that I know that the phone's not going to ring immediately, but at some point in time it will. And not only is it so that I can become more recognized to prospective clients, but really to the builder architectural community. I want to learn to get to know and work with more established builders. I'm very interested in meeting more of the architects. There's a very fertile ground of creativity and lots of different homes being built in this area, and I would like to be a part of some of them. So a lot of it is just to expand my ecosystem, and then I hope in the next 3 years to continue doing the same kind of projects that I've been doing. I really do enjoy working on a project from the ground up, whether it is a pretty extensive remodel or a new build, but I kind of like having my hands in all of it, and I've been lucky enough to have that. So I would like to continue on that same path.
It's it's a very different animal being there from the ground up than it is even just where, coming in the house is built and starting to do, even if at that point you are specifying hard surfaces and things like that. But from the ground up is a different animal, and it takes a huge level of organization and communication, like you said. It does. Yeah. I have a designer here that I've worked with for almost, I think it's going on 28 years now. And she's actually an architect and designer. And what she does is the full architectural plans for the home, oversees and specifies every part of the build, and she actually does the exterior landscape as well, and then she continues all the way to the interior finishes, to the draperies and the furniture and everything like that. And it's a marvel to watch her work, truthfully. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the organization and the level of detail. And, and when you do that sort of work, you can't ever, I find that she's never like, okay, that's good enough. Or, okay, no. It's always, well, I have to check this and let me double check that. And you make a note and call me back on this day. It's very buttoned up.
Yes. So. And I actually think it's even a little more detailed to from a creative perspective too, to have the honor to start right from the ground and go all the way through completion. It sort of necessitates that you really do some of your best creative work.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, almost every home that she's done, I mean, the smallest is probably 10,000 square feet and goes to 20 or 25. I mean, this is a truly high level, creative, professional woman. And I marvel at what she's capable of, truthfully. I really do. And it makes me understand and appreciate someone like yourself that is doing similar work. It just, there's a lot of things that you guys do as interior designers that I don't understand, I don't relate to, or I don't have an experience with, but there's a lot that I just am in complete awe of. So,
well, you get it. You understand a lot of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's one of those things, enough to know what I don't know.
Yes. That's really important, by the way.
Yes. So no, it's awesome. I just think it's terrific. I think the big, huge message here is that you really do have to have a complete understanding of the business side of it. And of course, this is our message that we're screaming out every single week. But I love it when I see somebody like yourself that has achieved such success. And really, it's funny because there's a lot of things that I'm good at that I never went to school for. So it's not that I can't believe somebody could be good at something that they don't go to school for. But I think what you do and not having gone to school for it is just a whole nother level.
Well, except that I kind of feel like the creative part of this job, the taste level and that kind of thing, I kind of feel like it's almost like the ability to draw. You kind of have it or you don't.
And then you just build on it and make it better and hone it.
You do. And you also have to know how to package it, present it, and market it.
Well, that's it. That's right. Yep. That's the truth, because otherwise you're just amazingly talented sitting there in your own studio and nobody knows about you.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So, all righty. Well, I was going to let you go, but I'm going to ask you one more question based on that. So, one thing to say to somebody about packaging and marketing it, since it is your expertise, any advice there? We talked about how you have a particular skill, and even when you said it, when you were talking about that, it comes once you did your brother's house, and then it turned out that a lot of your clients ended up being in the tech field and executives. That to me was so clear, because that's where you come from. You speak their language, you know how to relate to them, yada, yada. So, but that was your marketing and your skew. What do you have advice just for somebody that might have a different, but how to figure out what their thing is in marketing their firm?
I do. So I do think that you have to have, you have to know what your brand represents. And so for me, when people ask me, do you have a specific design kind of credo? I do. Mine is that I think that the world is crazy. And so I think that when we go into our homes, we all need to find an oasis of calm. whatever that means to us individually. And so, there's way too many studies that prove that clutter equals more stress, and none of us need more stress. So I'm very big on an aesthetic that tends to be not minimal, but just clean. I like cleaner lines. I like less stuff. And I think that I think if you're just starting out, it's helpful to be able to do whatever style somebody wants. It's just you need to be able to spin kind of your take on it. So if somebody asked me to do French country, which they haven't, but if they did, I would. It's not real big out here right now. But if they did, I would do that, but I would do it my way, which would end up being a little less foofy and a lot more clean. But it would still read that way. I think you have to be able to synthesize sort of what your view of the landscape is design-wise. I just think it's part of putting yourself in a capsule, and that capsule is your brand. I do think that young people are actually more familiar with branding
that's true.
than we were.
You're right.
They're all branding themselves on Facebook and
This is
Instagram and everything else that they possibly can. What I'm trying to say is find the one differentiator and build on that.
Okay.
And so it's kind of edit yourself.
Right.
Which goes back to my creative. The fact that I like a great edit. So
right.
Yeah. That's one of our hashtags on Instagram is it's all about the edit.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
no, it's good. It's very good. It's true. It's two things are true, that it's very important to find what your you is. It's what Fred Burns always tell us. What's our you? And Nicole Heimer also said the same thing. You know what Nicole said when she is a branding expert and a strategist, and one of the things that she said on the show was ask either a client that you've worked with, or ask yourself the question and hear what the answer is when you say, oh, that's the designer who, right? And finish the sentence. What is that answer for you? And that's where you start with those questions on who you are, what makes you different, and like you said, build on there, right? I love it. I love it. Very, very good. Very good stuff, Cynthia. I really do appreciate your spending your time with us today.
I appreciate it very much, too. It's just been delightful to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So talk about getting as much advice and inspiration as you can from one conversation, right? Cynthia is very talented. She's talented as a designer, but she's also talented as a business owner, and that is really the key. I keep saying it, but maybe when you hear it from others like this, maybe it rings a little more true. I hope it does. Some of the highlights that I thought of the conversation were these. Cynthia's best advice to you if you're just starting out. Number one, always show up as your best self. Put your best foot forward. You only have one chance to make a great first impression. Number two, be a good listener, both with your clients and your vendors. And number three, be good and kind and appreciative to your vendors. She says to protect and defend them. And guess what? I'll tell you, guess what? We will do anything and everything we can for you. I promise. Cynthia also talked about the importance of communication, both about keeping your clients informed of changes, whether those changes are in timelines or budgets, but also in the way you communicate with them. She said, don't let them see you sweat. And what she means by that is be professional. Put your best foot forward and always instill confidence in your processes with your clients. There are a lot of terrific insights here in this conversation with Cynthia. And if you have a designer friend that you think might benefit from this episode, would you share it with them? That'd be awesome if you did. Now, we're coming up on America's Mart Fall Design Week. Please reach out to me if you are going to be there. Find me on Instagram and Facebook at Luann Nigara. I'll be moderating a panel on Tuesday, the September 26th at 1 p.m. It's called Design Tech Talk. I'll be joined by Sarah Danielli, the CEO of My Doma Studio, Mark McDonough, the creator of Tastefully Inspired, and by Sandra Funk of House of Funk. This is going to be both informative informative and fun. That's for sure. So please come out and make sure to introduce yourself to me. And then don't forget, this Monday, just 4 or 5 days from now, you are invited to our Window Works showroom in Livingston, New Jersey, for a lunch and learn on how to make pro videos using your iPhone. This workshop is going to be run by Ian Kwa. Ian is smart and charming and knowledgeable, and I, for one, cannot wait for this seminar. So it's Monday, September 18th, okay? If you're in the Livingston, New York, New Jersey area and you'd like to come, please just RSVP through the Eventbrite, which can be found on our To the Trade blog at www.windowworks-nj.com. Go to the trade blog and then find the Eventbrite RSVP. It'll also be in the newsletter that comes out today. So if you are on our email list, you will have that, and the link will be there to do the RSVP. It's a free lunch and learn. I just need to know how much food to buy, okay? All righty. I just want to say there was another half a dozen reviews. Thank you tons and tons. I love it. I love it a lot. That's all I can tell you. Thank you if you're one of those who left it for me. Have an excellent day. Thank you for joining me again today for another episode of A Well-Designed Business. This podcast is a production of Window Works in Livingston, New Jersey, your trade resource for custom window treatments and awnings. Learn more about Window Works at www.windowworks-nj.com. All of our music is original music by Room 2 Productions. Please contact us if you want to learn more about original music for your business or your events.